Again, it's Gazza here. Today I'll be showing you how I'll be restoring this Celestron Power Seeker telescope. It is second-hand, and I'll be going through just a few repairs and just bring it up to scratch. It's been stored outside for a couple of years, so there's a little bit of work to do, but the intent is to try and bring it up to a presentable standard and make some use out of it. Right, so there's the telescope itself. It's an alt azimuth mount Celestron Power Seeker, and the details are, here we go, 700mm focal length and 60mm diameter lens. Lens itself is actually in good condition. I will still clean it though. Tripod's got a bit of rust on all screws. Finder scope is in okay condition, but one of the tightening screws is broken off. I'm going to have to replace that. Yeah, focuser seems to be working fine. One of the tightening knobs is broken there, so I have to replace that. The rest of it seems okay, but from here onwards I think I'll be taking it all apart, focusing all my efforts on the optical tube assembly. So these are the main components dismantled. There's the optical tube assembly. I'm going to take the geocap off and the lens cell and clean the lens. There's a bit of rust here on the fork carriers. I'm going to clean them. The slow-mo control rod is rusty as well. The screws here are rusty, which carry the finder scope, and the finder scope is mounted in the wrong way around as well. There's a little bit of rust here on the focusing knob, which we'll need to clean off. The screws which hold the telescope to the fork mount need a little bit of cleaning. The fork mount itself isn't too bad. The tightening knob for the slow-mo control rod is also rusty, and pretty much all the bolts and nuts on the tripod itself. I'll be taking the tripod apart and cleaning it all, so there's nothing there that's rusty. And I'm just going to undo the tripod legs by just undoing the nuts at the end of each tripod leg. So the fork has been disassembled. It's got a little bit of rust that needs to be cleaned. However, structurally it's still fine. And the tripod legs have been taken off. However, they're still attached by this center web. And to dismantle it, I'm going to have to use a screwdriver to undo the screws on each one of these legs. And I'll do that now. Right, so I've dismantled the tripod and taken out all the screws that need to be cleaned. Also includes the spider web, and the screws there also need to be removed and cleaned. Some of the screws here need to have the rust removed as well. And now I'll take apart the actual telescope. So I've got to take the dew cap off, and then the focuser through these screws there, and then the finder scope mounting screws as well. That is all disassembled now. There's a lens cell, I'll clean that later on. And there's the finder scope mount, I've got to give that a clean. And I've got to remove that broken screw from there. I'm going to remove the rust from the focusing knob, and all the screws have got rust on them. Everything's got rust on it, so I'll just I will put them in a container full of vinegar and then just let it sit there for half an hour while the rust goes away. So the tube has been cleaned from the inside and from the outside. All the elements I put inside the vinegar cup are starting to come out now, nice and shiny. Once they're out of the vinegar container there, they get dried up, and then look how they come out all nice and shiny. So this is the slow motion control link, which I'll assemble to the tube, and I'll assemble the shoulder mounts on the tube as well. So the fork brackets have been assembled, and I've just assembled the linkage arm for the slow motion control. You can see there how the parts have come out all shiny. Right, so this piece here is the finder scope mount. It hasn't come out very well out of the vinegar solution, so I'm going to use a bit of WD-40 to remove the rust off the threads. So as you can see, using WD-40 I was able to get rid of all the rust. It's back to looking shiny again. So that's ready to be put back into the telescope tube. So I also use WD-40 to remove the rust off the control knob axle, and there you go, it's all clean, no more rust is left, and that's ready to be reassembled into the focuser mechanism. So focusing tube has been given a little bit of a clean, otherwise no issues there. So to reassemble the focuser, just insert the tube with the teeth facing the little gap there, and then the focusing knob goes back there, And then now you just have to put the bracket back on the top and then secure that with the screws. Alright, so when we're reattaching the bracket, just tighten the screws equally on each side, just at the point where it is just tight enough to turn the focuser, but not so loose that the focuser gets loose. And also when reattaching the focusing tube, make sure the thread is on the outside, because that's where the eyepiece coupling is going to sit. And there's the eyepiece coupling. I've managed to remove the broken screw. The way I did that was I used the Dremel to cut a notch and use a small screwdriver to pull it out. So yes, the price you pay is I slightly damaged the coupling, but I managed to get the tightening screw out, which is probably more important, and that's ready to go back onto the focuser. And that's the focuser complete, ready for reassembly back onto the tube. And now we've got to put the finder scope mounting screws from the bottom, and then we'll put the focusing tube back on. Now that's done, we'll put the washers and the bolts back on. And the finder scope mount has been reattached, and just tighten the nuts just enough that it's a tight fit, but not so much you can actually warp the optical tube. And the focuser is ready to be reattached to the front of the tube. Use the focusing knobs and the brand name to line that all up, that way it's not upside down. And that's the focuser reattached there. Very nice and smooth, and all dust and rust free. The slow motion control link has also been added there. Rust free as well, all cleaned up, and the fork brackets have been reassembled. Now we'll move on to the finder scope mount, which goes like that. I'll go get the bolts, clean them from the rust, clean the rust off them, and then assemble them. So the finder scope screws have been cleaned and reattached right there. There you go. Nice and shiny. Now we'll move on to the lens cell. Okay, so I'm going to clean the lens cell. So the steps for this I've already demonstrated in the previous video. So I'm going to apply the same steps to the same cell here, noting it's the same aperture to the other one I worked on as well. So the lens has been cleaned. Fortunately, there's no scratches or anything at all. Both sides of the lenses have been cleaned. I didn't bother taking them out because I didn't want to risk damaging the spacing between them. Otherwise, there seem to be no scratches on the inside of the lenses. However, either side are clean, speck-free, dust-free, and scratch-free. And now I'm going to reassemble the lens cell back to the optical tube, and I'll secure them with the 3 screws that are here. And let's see our lens cell reassembled right there, and let's put the dew cap back on, and that'll be optical tube assembly complete. And the tube assembly has been complete. Dew cap's back on, lens cap's back on, the fork brackets are back on. Everything is required to get this tube up and running. So the fork is ready to go, and the smooth controller knob has been cleaned, rust removed, and I've also cleaned the control rod, so now I'll just reassemble it to the telescope. So the tripods just need just a little bit of a clean. Wherever there's rusty screws, I'm going to remove them and clean them with WD-40. So most of the tripod has been reassembled. Now I've just got to reattach the web and accessories tray. All the rust has been removed from the bolts and screws, and the tripod legs have been given a thorough clean, and there's a fork assembly right there. The web has been cleaned. Now I've got to add the accessories trays to it, and then after that we'll add the optical tube assembly. Telescope has been installed. Now to attach the smooth controller, the telescope needs to be tilted up, and then the rod connected between the linkage arm and the slow-mo controller there. Now that's the telescope assembled with the slow-mo controller there. And now I'm just going to do a bit of a maintenance on the finder scope itself, and the steps for maintaining the finder scope will be found on a previous video. I'll just take it apart, clean the lens, clean the objective lens, and give it a good clean, and just put it back in the finder scope mount. For the cleaning of the eyepieces, all you really need is just the cotton bud and it's dipped in a little bit of alcohol mixed with water and detergent. And then on the wet side, just gently rub around the eyepiece glass and very gently. And then when you're happy that it's soaked, then go over the other side of the cotton bud, which is dry, and slowly dry that up. Now if the other side of the eyepiece is dirty, then you repeat the same process. In this case here, the other side is pretty clean. You can repeat the same steps with the diagonal mirror. Be very, very, very gentle and careful because it is a surface mirror, and if you apply too much force, you'll probably scratch it. If there's a few dust particles, then it's probably not going to be a problem. But if there's a lot of dirt, then you want to be very careful. For the diagonal, we have to be very gentle and careful. We're going to take the mirror out and very slowly and carefully clean the mirror. The mirror is a surface mirror, which means you can easily scratch it and damage it if you're not careful. There's where you need to be this is where you need to be very gentle with it. And there's the diagonal disassembled, you can see. And there's the lid, and there's the surface mirror. As I said, you got to be very, 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 very gentle. So it's easy strokes. If there's any stubborn stains, just repeat the process. And when you're ready to dry, just use the dry side of the cotton bud. You may want to choose cotton wool as well. Do not touch the surface of the mirror no matter what. And that's the diagonal and eyepiece cleaning complete. And that's the telescope restoration complete. All parts have been reassembled and clean. The slow motion controller works really well now. Movement is smooth in both axes. All other accessories have been cleaned as well. And thanks for watching.